Let's talk about service factor, how strong the motor really is. Our motors up through 100 horsepower on the W22 have a 1.25 service factor. What does that mean? It means that you can run that motor at 25% overload continuously without shortening the life of the motor. Okay, so let's talk about the strength of the motor. We talked about service factor, 125 service factor, great for overload. But what else? There's more to a strength of a motor than just service factor or continuous overload. What about the occasional peak overload? When you need something to just, I need 200% for a real short period of time, you don't want your motor to stall when you hit that slug. So with our W22 motors, typically 200% and above, we have for breakdown torque. So momentary or short-term overloads, we can run up to 200%. Many you'll find exceed 250%. And if you look at a super premium motor, we've seen some that have 350% overload capability. So that really helps a lot when you start talking about either cyclic loads, where something has a short period that you know you'll have to have a high horsepower requirement. You don't have to oversize your motor so much. So you can ride through that with the standard W22 motor. Locked rotor torque is the other side of that. Starting. We want to start a motor. Conveyors often call for design C motors. Design C says that above about 15 horse you have to have 200% locked rotor torque so that you can start a load under overload conditions. Our standard W22, probably 60% of them exceed the design C torque requirements. So you can very often use a standard W22 in place of a design C motor. So what are some of the benefits of this strong motor, the 125 service factor, the high torques? I always like to tell people motor's a dumb animal. Doesn't know what it is till you tell it. So that 10 horse motor with an 1800 RPM, 3-phase 60, 460 volt nameplate on it, we can change that nameplate and call it a 10 horse, 1500 RPM, 3-phase, 400 volt, 50 hertz. Why can we do that? We can do that because when a motor's running at 50 hertz instead of 60 hertz, it's basically to carry the same horsepower, it's carrying 20% more torque. So it's the equivalent of overloading that motor by 20%. Well, we had 25% service factor, so no problem giving it an extra 20. The motor goes to a 1.0 service factor in most cases, but now that motor's flexible enough to ship globally and just change the nameplate to 50 hertz. So what other kinds of flexibility do we see from this? Ambience and altitudes. Again, we nameplate the motor for 40 volt, 460 volt in a 60 hertz environment at 40 degree ambient, 1,000 meters of altitude. But now somebody says, oh, but I'm selling it someplace I need 2,000 meters of altitude. What does that really mean to the motor? Really what it means is the motor is going to run about 10 degrees hotter. But remember, we started with a really cool running motor with lots of service factor capability. So there's a good chance that standard motor is also good for 2,000 meters of altitude. Maybe you want a high ambient. Maybe you just say, hey, the motor's going to run in a 50 degree C ambient. Again, what does that mean to the motor? It means 10 degrees. If the motor had that service factor built into it already, it may be very capable of handling that application. So most of our motors are capable of doing more than is on the nameplate. What's on the nameplate is the industry standard. So if you get an opportunity, take a look at a specific motor, consider re-rating a standard motor and taking advantage of the flexibility of the standard WEG W22 product line.